All right. Hello, everyone. Exciting episode here today. Returning guest, Sylvain Tristan, who is the author of Redating Ancient Greece, 500 BC equals 1300 AD, which we have spoken about before. That link will be in the description. When we spoke last, Sylvain hinted that he had another presentation that he was working on and he would like to get out. So that's what we are going to do today. This presentation is about the day before September 12th on 2001. And you'll have to forgive me. I want to speak a little bit in code here because this is a very sensitive topic, especially on YouTube. And I don't want to lose the channel over this. And I'm hoping that Sylvain's French accent is going to disguise us a little bit and maybe sneak us through the censors. So I'm very excited about this. I have no sneak preview. I have practically no idea here, so I'm going to hand it right over to him, and I'll save my comments to the end. Sylvain, hello. Thank you for joining us again.
Hi, Ryan. Thanks. Thank you for letting me, present my 9/11 predictive programming in Hollywood presentation. So we're going to talk about subliminal messages in movies. Okay, spoiler alert. I might spoil a few movies here and there sometimes. I'm sorry, but I'll have to. So before starting the presentation, I'd like to give a few thanks, if you allow me. So I'd like to thank Barely Human, a YouTuber who made these great videos, Back to the Future, Predicts 9/11, which are absolutely great. And also 88 Finis Temporis, who keeps making wonderful videos about predictive programming in Hollywood. Great videos. Also a book called The Most Dangerous Book in the World, 9/11 as Mass Ritual, which helped me a lot, by S.K. Bain, a must read. So 2001, why 2001? The year is important. 201, two towers, 0 towers, and then 1 World Trade. So 2 become 1. 2001, the year is important. This is the tribute in light. So from 3/11, 2002, so 3/11, just like 9/11, is a very important date, as we'll see. 88 spotlights started to replace the Twin Towers. And 88, of course, is a twin number. So this was on 3/11, 2002. Now, on 11/3, 2014, 1 World Trade opened. So it's 3/11 in reverse. So if you look carefully at the name, 1 World Trade, OWT in reverse, it's TWO, which is 2 in 1. So 1 World Trade remembers the 2 towers. And again, it opened on 11/3, 2014. 2 became 1. 2 towers became 1. Now, COVID-19, I will not speak about COVID-19 today, but this can be the discussion next presentation, maybe. So the WHO declares COVID-19 a pandemic on 3/11, again, 3/11, 2020, same number, same date. Now, I'd like also to thank David Ewing Jr., who writes wonderful books, and especially 2 books which are going to be relevant today, Code 19 and 33 Degrees. And he said Hollywood is the new Bible, which means that the Bible, of course, was full of prophecies. Now, so is Hollywood. So according to him, Hollywood is the new Bible, is the way for some people to talk to us using these numbers, 19 and 33, and of course, making subliminal messages in films. And 33 is a twin number. Yeah, number 19 is very important, as I just said. 9/11 or 11/9, depending on the way you say it, you've got the 19 in it. Now, COVID-19 obviously has 19 in it too. And COVID-19 occurred 19 years later. 19 years after 2001 was 2020, the lockdown. Now, 33, as I said, is just as important as 19. So 33, the twin number. The Twin Towers started being built in 1968, and they were destroyed in 2001, 33 years later. Another important number is also 44, because the Twin Towers opened on 4/4, 1973, and 44 is also a twin number. Now, here's an example of a film. Okay, Die Hard with a Vengeance, 1995. So the vengeance is important. So a very recurrent theme in Hollywood movies is the opposition between two opposite characters. Here you got a black man and the white guy, and they're running in the streets of New York. And behind them, you can see the Twin Towers. So it's like the yin and the yang, okay? Male, female, moon, sun, black, white, rich, poor. It's a very recurrent theme in Hollywood. So here you've got the black and white. And at the end, one says, I was just starting to like you. So two become one. As you can see here, they're about to die, or they think they're going to die. There is a bomb. It's a twin bomb, which is an echo of the Twin Towers. And at this time, at this point in the film, the two opposites become one. Also in songs, I will just give you one or two examples of song, because
I was thinking about that song, Two Becomes One by the Spice Girls.
Tonight is the night when two become one.
Yep.
Yes, of course. The title is Two Become One, so this is crazy. Spice Girls, 1996. The dream of you and me together, she says. And at the same time, you see the Twin Towers, and the camera zooms in on the woman, and she literally merges with the Twin Towers. Two become one. The dream of you and me together. And later in the song, you can see another girl singing in the backdrop of skyscrapers, and of course two huge columns, two twin columns, and she says two become one. As you can see, two become one. Two towers are going to become one. Yeah, 1968, as I said, is year one. And interestingly, 911, the emergency number in the US, was created in January 1968. So from now on, in 1968, 911 meant help. And of course, in August of the same year, One World Trade Center starts being built, and it was destroyed 33 years later, as we said. Now, another number, interestingly, I talked about the yin and the yang. So you got 911 for emergencies in America, but you've got 311 for non-emergency services. So which was created in 1996. Now, 9/11 and 3/11, these two dates are opposite dates in the year. They're set exactly 6 months apart. This is the very famous, or infamous, I should say, hijacker, Mohammed Atta. He resided in Hollywood, Florida, along with other terrorists, or alleged terrorists, right? Why Hollywood? Okay, we're talking about Hollywood, California, and the terrorists of 9/11, or some of them, came from Hollywood, Florida. I think it's no coincidence. Of course, Back to the Future is 9/11 loaded. You can see the 9 here, 11 here, and here the torch, 1, 9/11-1. It's a very famous shot. And Marty McFly just returned to the future, and just before he tried to warn Doc that Arabic-speaking terrorists were going to kill him. And what do you have at the back here? The Atomic Kid, the film. Are we being told that something nuclear is going to occur on 9/11? I think so. It was something atomic, something nuclear. That's Back to the Future again, with a very famous shot, the Twin Pines Mall, just like the Twin Towers, which become the Lone Pine Mall with the 33, so One World Trade. And if you reverse the picture, you've got 9/11. And here on the watches, also another coded 9/11 or 11/9. Now, Marty McFly, Marty means the war, and it sounds like a martyr, right? And McFly, of course, sounds like flying. So he represents the first warplane or martyr plane on 9/11. And a very funny thing is that Marty can't stand being called chicken. So is it because chickens are birds which can't fly? I think so. Now, this is Biff's tannin. Now, Biff means sharp blow with the fist, and tannin is German for pine. And we saw that the pine means twin tower. So he clearly represents one of the two twin towers. And he's going to be biffed, literally, by George McFly, and he's going to collapse, just like the towers. Now, this is George McFly. So George McFly again, so it's like flying. So he's the second martyr plane. George was a very famous martyr. So he's the second martyr plane on 9/11. Now, Biff often calls him an Irish bug. And a bug, of course, is an insect. Therefore, a flying animal, but a tiny one. So just like the chicken, it doesn't like being called a bug because it's not like a beautiful bird. It's just an insect. This is a scene cut from film editing from Back to the Future. So this is on YouTube. You can see that old Biff dies, and on the plate of the flying car at the back, you can see the numbers 9/11. Can you see them?
Mm-hmm.
And right above this 9/11, you see what looks like twin towers. And also on the car, you have I brake for birds, which can sound like I brake for birds or for planes. 4 planes were broken, or so are we told, on 9/11. Now, this is also from Back to the Future, but part 2. This is Douglas needles. And Douglas, of course, is a type of pine. Well, pines have needles. So I believe he represents the second twin tower. Now here, when you see him in Back to the Future 2, you've got here the sphere, right, which was at the foot of the twin towers. 88 in his address, and the most shocking thing, I think, is this. He was born, we are told here, on August 6, 1968. Now, the first One World Trade began to be built on August 6, 1968. So, yes, it does represent Twin Tower number 2.
So can I get this straight here? So Marty and his father, George, both represent one of the 2 planes that went into these towers. And the 2 antagonists of the films, Biff and Needles, represent the buildings themselves.
Yes, I believe so. It's very clear in the film, especially the birth date here. Also from Back to the Future number 2, you're fired. All right, so Marty is fired. So, and then look at his hands. He has like a Christ-like position, or maybe a plane-like position. He looks like a plane when he's fired, right? So you decide, up to you to decide if it's the Christ or the plane or both. But anyway, he is fired. He's going to be on fire. Here it's Back to the Future number 2, and we see a Jaws 19 with a hologram of a shark, right? And I believe, there were 19 alleged terrorists on 9/11, so 19 again. And flying over Marty, like a plane, is this hologram. So were the planes real planes on 9/11? That's the question. And this is George McFly, right? So as I said, is martyr plane number 2. He defeats Biff Tannen here. So he defeats the Pine or the Twin Tower. Well, on 9/11, the second plane crashed into the South Tower at 9:03 a.m. And here it's 9:03 p.m. We know that from the clock because he was looking at the clock 4 minutes before. It was 1 minute before 9, and then it shot in real time. And 4 minutes later, believe it or not, at 9:03 p.m., he defeats Biff, the Pine, the Tower. This is crazy. By the way, all the times, both times of planes hitting the World Trade Center and the buildings collapsing are coded in Back to the Future. This is from The Matrix, 1999. This is a famous one also. The date of expiration of Neo's passport is the 11th of September 01. Now, his birth date is 3/11, March 11. As I said, the opposite date, which, crops up all the time. In The Matrix, Neo's real name is Thomas. Now, Thomas is an Aramaic word meaning twin. And of course, there are twins in The Matrix Reloaded. So, okay, this name, Tom or Thomas, keeps cropping up all the time. Do we live in the Matrix? That's my question. It looks like we were living in the Matrix. Same thing with the Truman Show, which came out in 1998. Here we see that it's the 10,910th day of the show, which means that Truman was born 10,910 days before. Now, the next day, the following day, the day he understands he's living in the Truman Show, is the 10,911th day. So it's 1191 in reverse. This is crazy. This is absolutely crazy. Also in the Truman Show, the film begins with a dog, and then you see these two pillars, these twin pillars in the street, and there is a spotlight with Sirius Canis Major written on it, falling from the sky. And then the radio talks about a plane in difficulty and the dangers of flying. Well, this is crazy because only one animal died in the Twin Towers on 9/11. This is a police dog called K9, like K9, dog, Sirius. Yes, Sirius. And K9, K is the 11th letter of the alphabet. So K9 is 11-9. This is crazy. Do we live in a Truman Show? To recap, dog, Sirius, dog, Sirius, pillars like the Twin Towers. It's absolutely nuts. This blew my mind away. This is another film. In this film, it's Pushing 10, 1999. The main character is called Nick Falzone, which in Italian means a war scythe. And here you can see an airliner during the opening credits at the very beginning of the film, scything, literally scything the Twin Towers. And then here comes the title of the film, Pushing 10. And when the title of the film appears, the wing of another airliner again, scythe here, the Twin Towers right here.
For the audio people, the plane is basically, it's passing by the buildings, but the way that it's shot, it looks like it could be cutting into it. Obviously, it's not literally cutting into it, but it's placed directly in front of it.
Yeah, it's just symbolically, of course. I should have said it. Yeah, I should have made it clearer. Yeah. These are a few examples of radios in films. So the first one is from Encounters of the Third Kind in 1977. The radio stops and there's a flash of light, and the cursor is between 9 and 11. This is Christine, same thing, cursor between 9 and 11. When the girl chokes, all right, the radio turns on by itself, and she chokes on food while the car emits a blinding light with explosions. In Gremlins, 1984, Sapphire 11 and 9/11. So this is the birthstone for September, which is the 9th month. So it's 9/11 twice, because if you replace Sapphire by September, it's September 11 and 9/11. And at the same time, you got the sound of breaking dishes on the radio. And the last one is Child's Play, which came out on November 9, 1988, twin year. And November 9, of course, is 11-9. So again, the man is pointing at 9 and 11 here at the moment he gets attacked by the doll. Here are a few clocks. There are just so many, but these are interesting. For example, the first one dates back to 1970 from Doomsday, an episode of Lands of the Giants called Doomsday, set in the future with a bomb in New York. And they're talking about an airliner. And you have this close-up on a clock with the hands on 9 and 11. Pretty Woman, 1990. You hear an ambulance, a siren, which it's 911 in the street, and then alarm clocks rings, and of course the hands are on 9 and 11. The Fisher King, 1991, there is a mass suicide attack in Manhattan at the beginning, and there they're talking about a lie. Next shot, this clock. Devil's Advocate, 1997, Kevin, the main character, refuses to take the elevator in New York with the devil. Again, a clock with the hands on 9 and 11. Okay, this is from The Big Lebowski, 1998. Okay, so here the man signs a check, September 11, 1991. So exactly 10 years before 9/11. Now, at the same time, you've got on TV Bush Sr., who says this will not stand this aggression, right? And Bush Jr., 10 years later, is going to say virtually the same thing after 9/11. Now, the only problem is that it's a real footage, of course, of Bush Sr., but he said that on August 5, 1990. So they changed the date to September 11. This is from Terminator 2, Judgment Day, with Arnold Schwarzenegger in 1991. Now, Arnold Schwarzenegger, AS is 119. A is the first letter in the alphabet, while S is number 19. So there is this T-shaped overpass, okay, with caution 9/11, and then this huge explosion.
Where does it say that? Could you go back to that slide?
So this is right on the bridge. On the other side of the bridge, you can't see it here because we see it just before the explosion. So we see like a first T, okay, with caution 9/11, and then there is a shot on the other side, and you see this explosion. I guess it's like 9 feet 11 inches, but this is a very funny coincidence.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is also a 9/11 loaded documentary called Connections from the BBC Science, 1978. It's called The Trigger Effect. Now, it starts at the site of the Twin Towers, as you can see. And then you have a focus on the power outage of November 9, which is 11/9, or as they say in the UK, 9/11, 1965. And there is this Scandinavian flight they talk about, Flight 911, which is having difficulty landing at JFK. This is crazy. And then also they follow this woman, Mrs. McKenna, in New York, who gives birth, guess what, to twins. And they're anesthetized with a potentially explosive gas. And then they say 16 minutes, 11 seconds, which of course it's 11:91 backwards. They say the night New York became a trap. So as I said, the documentary is 9/11 loaded from beginning to end. This is from Magnum, the series, 1984. It's called Echoes of the Mind. Here, Higgins is waiting for flight UA 119 from New York. Now, same episode. Guess what? You've got Sharon Stone, and she's playing not one, but two twins, right? And they arrive in a Porsche 911. So twins, Porsche 911, and one of the twins falls in love with Thomas Magnum. Remember that Thomas means twin. So literally, Thomas Magnum means the big twin. Big twin, like the big twin tower, maybe, and played by Tom, another twin, Tom Selleck. This is crazy. I call these twin scenes because, look, the second picture is also from Magnum. So, okay, here she's smoking. And this is the exact moment when she learns she has a twin sister because she didn't even know. And she's smoking between two fingers, which I believe represents the Twin Towers on fire or smoking. So we've got the exact same scene in a film by Brian De Palma called Sisters, which was released in 1973. Interestingly, Brian De Palma was born on 9/11, 1940. Now, at the exact moment when the woman learns she's got a twin, she didn't know about. Okay, she's smoking between two fingers. Almost the same thing here in Dead Ringers, which, of course, in 1988, yes, twin year, okay, she with twins, right? So the moment the woman learns she's going out with a man who's got a twin, all right, the woman opposite her who says they're twins there, she's smoking again. This is from Lethal Weapon, 1987. Okay, you can park anytime except between 9 and 11. Yeah. And then comes a plane, explosion, another plane, the same plane which comes out, and then here a second plane. So 2 planes and explosion, 9/11.
Could you go back to the previous slide? There's a statue of Venus, I believe that's Venus in the background. Do you think that has any significance?
It could have. It could have. I haven't worked on this particular aspect, Venus, but okay, maybe. I have no idea. Did
Okay.
you have anything in mind?
No, not really. I just thought it was very prominent, and it's very rare that things are in frame for no reason, right? There's a lot of thought that goes into these frames, so I just thought maybe it might have some significance.
Yeah, there might be a reason. There must be a reason. This is from Meteor, released on 10/19, 1979. So 10/19, you remove the 0 and you've got 119. So look here on the screen, 9/11. And then the towers are destroyed, the Twin Towers destroyed by a meteor. This is the Towering Inferno, of course, 1974, which is 9/11 loaded too. So here on the poster, you've got 9 people, 9 actors, plus 2, 11, right? And even the sides look like the Twin Towers. And of course, it's about 1 tower on fire, right? But you've got 2 towers on the poster. Here you've got a reverse 9/11. Okay, I will not show you everything, but just know that the fire starts in room 81K. 8 plus 1 is 9, and K is the 11th letter in the alphabet, so 9/11 again. And here, okay, you've got many shots in the Towering Inferno with not just 1 tower, but 2 towers. Only one is on fire, but you see 2 towers. And at the end of the film, the fireman says, one of these days they'll kill 10,000 people in one of these fire traps. Well, I believe that was the plan. It's a very odd, very weird prediction. And even the book, okay, the film was based upon the book called The Glass Inferno. Look at the top of the book cover. Okay, I have a zoom here. 9/11/1 on the book itself. How can that be a coincidence? It's not. This is from the Thomas Crown affair. All right, so you remember that Thomas is the twin. All right, so both movies, I believe, code COVID-19. But interestingly, there is also a wink, an allusion, I should say, to the Twin Towers, because the moment the woman understands the thief is Thomas Crown, next shot, you see Thomas Crown boating with the Twin Towers at the back. This is Die Hard. So the 3 movies, I mean, number 1, number 2, and number 3, especially number 1 and number 3 are 9/11 loaded. You see here on the poster 1 tower, but it looks like 2 with an explosion at the top. Here it's a bomb. The image has been reversed, but when you reverse it, you see 9/11. Now, this is really interesting because the film Die Hard begins with a plane. This is the first image, the very first image of the film. It's a plane. And then the first minute of the film, the first dialogue, trust me, I've been doing this for 9 years. And the other one, McClane, says, trust me, I've been doing this for 11 years. Now, look at the original script. It's online. I could find it online on the internet. Okay, it was originally written 20 years, 13. And they changed it for 9 and 11. Now, the very last image of the film.
I think it's just worth poking in there too, that on the original script where the first man says, I've been doing this for 20 years, and then Bruce Willis says, I've been doing this for 13 years, those are more years, which means more experience, which would make the statement more impactful or more relevant to the conversation. But they decreased the amount of years for both. And the first one, it actually now has less experience than Bruce Willis.
Yes. Yeah.
So that doesn't make that much sense in the context of the original
That's right.
script.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is the last shot from the film. This is the closing credits, right? And what you see are the Twin Towers of Century City in Los Angeles. They're seen several times in the film, and they were built, guess what, by the same architect as the Twin Towers. Twin Towers of Los Angeles, built by the same architect. This is Die Hard 3, or Die Hard with a Vengeance. We have a beautiful 9/11 and one here. Okay, it's full of 9/11 things. Now, this one is really good because, for example, yeah, this is Zeus, okay, the African American guy. He's an electrician, so I believe he's a representation of Zeus, the thunder god. And here, with his arm, okay, they represent thunder, okay. And what do you have at the back? The Twin Towers. And same theme, Die Hard with a Vengeance. The terrorist pretends to be called Wanderflüge, which in German means flight. So he's preparing a terrorist attack near what? The Twin Towers that you can see here. And then there is this explosion in the subway, Wall Street station with twin columns, or columns anyway. This is from Naked, which is a British film which talks about, guess what? Prophecies and the apocalypse. Now, the license plate of this Porsche 911 is A911 FWD, or a 911 forward. And here, this statue in the film, they call it the pizza delivery man, who is about to strike the Statue of Liberty here.
Looks like he's bowling with a plate.
Exactly. This is absolutely crazy. This is from 1960. So as early as 1960, the towers had not even been built yet. It was 8 years before starting tower number 1. Okay, the beginning of the episode of this Twilight Zone says, you're looking at Act 1 of A Nightmare. The date is Tuesday, September 11, 1864. The text says that they destroyed with fire the beautiful city they had taken, even though there was no need for that. So they destroyed a city they already had on September 11. Now, the only problem is that September 11, 1864 was actually a Sunday. Now, September 11, 2001, on the other hand, fell on a Tuesday. And the same episode, this man is called Walter, but we learn that he used to be called Tom, so the twin. And at the end, he turns into dust, just like the Twin Towers. And they say Walter Jameson has access to knowledge that couldn't come out of a volume of history, but rather from a book on black magic.
The changing of dates is very interesting to me. If you could go back to that first slide of the Twilight Zone. By the way, this is episode 24 in season 1. But yeah, you know that these writers take care in the details. The details are very, very important. So when they know, they would definitely know that in 1864, September 11th was a Sunday, but it has to have been changed deliberately to me. Just like that example before where George Bush Sr. made a speech in August 1990, but for the purposes of the film and the purposes of the dates that appear on the check that the character is signing, they deliberately changed it to what looks to us like it's coding for 9/11. Like, why would they make these changes when they are clearly aware of the details and they're clearly detail oriented?
It's clearly a prophecy. They know they should know, but it's the prophecy. It's deliberate. Okay, next one. So this is a very famous one, of course, but everybody knows The Simpsons, season 9, episode 1, 1997, with the magazine 9/11. But very few, I believe, fewer people know. They haven't checked. It's full of 9/11 allusions, like allusions. This one in the episode
in
March.
The same episode.
It's the same episode, and we see the Twin Towers in the episode. And Marge at some point says, "Wow, the future is here." And this is also very interesting. Here you've got a ferry boat with immigrants, and the captain says, "Back into the hold." But the second he says that, what you see behind him are the Twin Towers. with the Statue of Liberty and the torch right above it. And he opens the trapdoor and he says, "Back into the hold." So is he talking to the immigrants, or is he referring to the Twin Towers? Back into the hold. This is from Single White Female, which came out in 1992. It's about twins. And here this woman imitates, she's got a twin, but this is not the twin. She just tried to imitate the other one. So it's really about twins. And guess what? They live in apartment 1103. So here is 311 or 113. And at the moment, the single white female seeks female to share. So which gives them, when you see the newspaper clip, you've got this 9/11 here, right above, the key scene in the film.
And that number actually is, once again, for the audio people. And if you didn't know, you can watch this on video on YouTube and Rumble. But if you suddenly can't find my YouTube channel, you'll probably know why. But it'll be on Rumble either way. It's also on Patreon. All the episodes go on Patreon at least 1 week early, sometimes several weeks early if I'm very on top of things. All of those links are in the description here. But what he's showing here on this classified ad is the advertisement above the one that's highlighted. It says 555-9110. So we all know that 555 is just a movie placeholder, so it's not a real number. So I think that's just eliminated from the equation here. Then you've got 9110, and in numerology, 0 doesn't mean anything. So really, you're left with just 911.
Exactly. This is from a film called The Dream Team, which came out in 1989. So they are discussing the Twin Towers at some point. I believe it's like 20 minutes into the film, and they are arriving in Manhattan, and they're discussing, they're emphasizing the Twin Towers. At the same time, what do you have in the sky? A plane, okay, flying right above the skyline. And a few minutes later, they park in Manhattan, and they park right under a sign with 119. This is absolutely crazy, because this is from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, which was a children's television series. And guess what? This, with Fred Rogers, it's lasted 33 years, just like the Twin Towers, but not any year, from 1968 to 2001. Is it a coincidence? I don't know, but it's really strange. Now, there was this film, yes, in 2019, called A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, with Tom Hanks. So again, Tom Twin Hanks, who played Fred Rogers. Look at his look. And you see the Twin Towers here and there in the film. It's models, yeah, of the Twin Towers, but you do see them. This is from Sesame Street. This is an episode which came out in 1992 called Telly Sees a Giant Number 11. Now look at that. Does it look like a number 11, or does it look like the Twin Towers?
They look like concrete pillars. Yeah.
Yeah, it really does look like the Twin Towers or concrete pillars. And at the same time, the music is the theme from 2001: A Space Odyssey. This is from Sesame Street, but this time this is an episode called Another Hurricane episode. So I believe the hurricane is important. I'll tell you why in a few seconds. This came out in March of 2001. Here you got a wolf who blows away a K and a 9, just a K and a 9. So a K is the 11th letter. So basically, the wolf or the hurricane blows away 9 and K, 11. And it's an episode about birds. And here the little pig says, we need to build twin nests on the Twin Towers. Next shot, children making models of planes. Crazy.
I would like to comment as well. I know that sometimes it can look like we're really reaching for numbers and trying to make the numbers make sense, but when this episode aired on March 29th, 2001, first of all, March is 3, and it's not 311, but 29. 2 is 2 ones, and then a 9.
Oh, well seen, yes.
And then when you were talking about the Tom Hanks movie where he played Mr. Rogers, that was released in 2019. And yeah, I just thought the same thing, that the 0 means nothing, so it's 219, and 2 is, of course, 2 ones. And I'm thinking this just because, they can't release all the movies on these very specific dates like March 11th or September 11th, but I do believe that they'll stretch the numbers just like we are here. They'll stretch to reach to try and fit those numbers in. And to me, March 29 is equivalent to March 11th, and 2019 is equivalent to 1119.
Oh yes, and the code is very easy. You will see a lot of these Ks meaning 11. It's just not just one example, it's so many. Okay, I found a lot, and other people found even more, and I think there are so many more to find. It's just almost infinite. And yes, so few people know that, but on 9/11 there was a huge hurricane, okay, off the coast of Manhattan. Look at that. They didn't talk about it on TV, they didn't say anything, almost nothing. So it was called Erin, and here you can see New York, and look how close it was and how huge it was. And it was heading towards New York, and on September 11, it suddenly went to the northeast. And why didn't they talk about it? It must have played a role, I think, this hurricane, in the destruction of the Twin Towers. So Hellraiser. These 3 posters are posters of Hellraiser, the series, the 3 films. So the first one and the third one were released on 9/11. Now, the second one was not released on 9/11, but it was released on 9/9, which is a twin date, 9/9/88. And number 3 even has the Twin Towers on the poster. And each film has a running time of 93 minutes. Now, the first attack of the Twin Towers occurred in 1993. That was the first bombing. And on 9/11, 2001, one of the 2 towers was hit on the 93rd floor. And the plane which crashed in Shanksville was flight 93. So 93 here is the duration of each film. And this is Hellraiser, the music album by Ozzy Osbourne. And it was released on 10/19/1991. It's full of 1 and 9. You remove the 0, it's again 11/9 or 119. This is Dream Theater. This is quite well known. Live scenes from New York, which came out on 9/11/2001, the very day, with New York and the Twin Towers and the Statue of Liberty on fire. Live scenes from New York. And Dream Theater. This is Falling Down, the film. So this one is also loaded, 9/11 loaded. Running time, 113 minutes, okay? 113 minutes, 113, 11/3. And of course, as I said before, One World Trade Center opened on 11/3/2014. Now, also, the film came out on the very same day as the first World Trade Center bombing, which occurred on February 26, 1993. You have skyscrapers at the back, and it's called Falling Down. This is crazy. Okay, there are just so many scenes. I just selected 1 or 2. So this in this scene, the man says, "I'm here to keep the street, from falling in, so from collapsing." All right. At the same time, an airplane is flying right behind William. And then what does he do? He causes an explosion near the 2 scaffolds, which look like the Twin Towers. The Twin Towers right here. Explosion, Twin Towers, plane. This is Pearl Harbor. So many people consider 9/11 to be the new Pearl Harbor. On the poster, you've got even the year 2001, which is quite unusual. You've got here the planes, of course, attacking Pearl Harbor, and the TT, like the Twin Towers, and the cross, meaning the sacrifice. And in this scene, it's full of scenes with the allusions to or predicting 9/11. In this scene, you've got 2 planes training and twin chimneys in the back.
I find these images interesting when there's something that's obviously off Like on the Pearl Harbor poster that you're talking about on the left, there is 3 pillars in a field. It's being used as a clothesline, so they're all connected by wires.
Yes.
But the first one is obviously a cross, and the other 2 are capital T's. They're not a cross.
Yeah.
Why would anybody build it like that? Why is the one different? It seems deliberate because it doesn't seem to make sense. If you were making a clothesline, you'd probably make all 3
Yes.
pillars the exact same way. It seems like symbolism to me.
It is. And why would it come out 113 days before 9/11? Again, 11/3. This is crazy. This is from Shaft, a movie called Shaft, which came out in 2000. It's 9/11 loaded too. I selected the key scene. So when the smoking black victim passes behind the Twin Towers public telephones, right? And there is a murder scene, okay? And suddenly we understand what happened, and we see this key scene, and you've got what? The Twin Towers, or a very close representation of them. This is the War of the Roses with Michael Douglas, which came out in 1989. And again, it's a 9/11 loaded film. So this is a key moment, and the running time of the film is 116 minutes, which is a reverse 9/11. This is a key moment in the film. Barbara wants to buy a house. This is the house where the Roses are going to fight, right? And it has what? 2 huge twin columns, all right? And we see the number of the house. Guess what? 119. And immediately we see that the house is associated with death. This is the bonfire of the vanities with Bruce Willis, Tom Hanks. Okay, again, Tom Hanks, Tom the twin, and and Melanie Griffith. So what you got here on the poster is the bonfire right behind the Twin Towers. It's loaded too. The first image of the film is this huge bird, which is on the Chrysler building, with its beak pointing at the Twin Towers. And it's a Brian De Palma film. And again, Brian De Palma was born on 9/11, 1940. Next shot, Tom Hanks. Okay, so again, the same thing with the twin, Thomas Hanks. And what do we say about this Tom Hanks? This character is playing in this film. He was there at the top, impervious, untouchable, insulated by wealth and power, a master of the universe, a great height from which to view the rest of the world, a great height from which to fall. So he's clearly a representation of the Twin Towers. And the next shot, it's followed by a fax with the words Concorde, Air France. And then we see a plane, the Concorde, landing. Same film, we see Mayor Abe Weiss's nose right over the location of the Twin Towers on the map. All right. He's the mayor of New York. He's addressing the, quote, rich sons of bitches, unquote. They think money is going to protect them. You stupid son of bitches. I'd like to light a fire under all their lily white asses. Let me see what this feels like. Let the whole third world see the smoke and come after them. You see, it's like his nose is pointing at the area where the Twin Towers are. And then here it mimics a plane flying over New York City. So actually it's full of codes, this film. I'm not going to decode it now, but it's clearly a plane. It is representing a plane flying over New York. And at the end of the film, Peter Fallow, Bruce Willis. So Peter means the stone, and fallow means break up land, to sow. So I believe it's a representation of one world trade, because at the end he's finally recognized and praised for his work. And we can see his book, which is 2 towers merged into one, 2 become one. This is Ghostbusters, 1984. You've got something very similar here. Here, let's meet Walter Peck. Walter Peck literally means powerful army, and Peck means this is Walter, and Peck means like a peck with his beak. And he says, I'm Walter Peck. And his head is right in front of the location of the Twin Towers on the map. And later on in the film, we see him again saying, "My name is Peck," with his nose, okay, almost pointing at the target on the map. And the target is at the location of the Twin Towers. And the following words in this scene are, "The city must prepare for a disaster of biblical proportion, human sacrifice, mass hysteria." And this is even not the best. This is the best. Look at the timing here. 1911 into the film, two explosions or several explosions coming out seemingly from the World Trade Center, or just behind the World Trade Center. And the Twin Towers even disappear twice behind the explosions. So this is the magic trick. 1911 into the film, the Twin Towers disappear. Magic trick. This is from the Patriots. Okay, the Patriots, which came out in 2000 with Mel Gibson. It's a 9/11 loaded film. Now, the opening credits, Benjamin is trying to make a rocking chair. And he says, guess what? 9 pounds, 11 ounces. That's perfect, perfect. Okay, like a twin word, perfect, perfect. And a few seconds later, his rocking chair finally collapses. Not so perfect after all. Now, this is another scene from the Patriots. Okay, here his son Thomas, all right, the twin, Thomas Martin, the twin warrior, is shot dead. He collapses. Same film, the church, which is a Christian symbol, is burned down with people inside. So it's a human sacrifice. And what remains of the church when Benjamin gets there are only the two columns here, representing the Twin Towers. And of course, there is this Patriot Act, which was made by the US government on October 26, 2001. And the final battle in the film, you've got the Patriots against the British, and the battle occurs also in October. I believe this is no coincidence. Now, to avenge his son's death, Benjamin and his children kill 19 men. They're supposed to be 20, but we know that one survived. So 19, key number. Another scene, if that's your position, 18 of your officers will have to die. 19 if you hang me with my men. 19. And this is the ending, but it's only in script. They didn't keep it for the film. So Benjamin is making a new rocking chair, and it weighs this time 2 pounds, 14 ounces. Now, remember that One World Trade Center opened in 2014. That's 214. Same numbers. Well, they didn't keep it in the film, but it's in the script, which is online.
And 13, of course, is an important Masonic number as well. So the towers fell in 2001, and the new one was erected in 2014, 13 years later.
That's right. That's right. Exactly. And at the end of the film, what you see is two chimneys, all right, which I believe represent the Twin Towers. And in between, they're building a house. Okay. So I believe it symbolizes the rising of One World Trade Center, unifying the Twin Towers to become one. This is Hannibal, which was released in 2001 in February. Very interesting film. Okay. Here in the film, Clarice received a letter and treats it just like the letters on the future anthrax attacks, starting, if you remember, on September 18, 2001. So this is still the future. This is February. This is an example of a so-called anthrax letters, all right? The so-called Tom Brokaw from NBC note. Tom is, of course, a twin, funny coincidence. And even the T's here, the first T's here are emphasized, strangely, like the Twin Towers, maybe. Now, back to the film. In the film, they talk about, guess what? Anthrax Island, which is Plum Island in New York. Okay, it's already mentioned in the first movie. So there are these letters which look like anthrax letters, and then they talk about Anthrax Island.
So this movie came out in February, and the anthrax attacks actually happened in September.
Yes, exactly a week after 9/11. And here in the film, the FBI's 10 most wanted fugitives, Osama bin Laden. And the camera even zooms in on Osama bin Laden.
This is
So-
before 9/11.
Before 9/11. And the same film, sorry, this is a spoiler, but this is a key scene. This is when Chief Inspector Patsy, who was trying to capture Lecter, is assassinated by Lecter, and is assassinated at 1:19:1 exactly. And the finale of the film begins with the Porsche 911, of course. And then you've got these lit candles, which I believe are symbolic of the Twin Towers. And then the clock hands of the clock are on the 9 and almost on the 11. Not quite, but you hear a helicopter sound. Now, a few minutes later, 2-3 minutes later, the clock hands must now be on the 9 and the 11. We don't see them, but we guess they are because it's shot in real time. And that's the time when Lecter cuts off his own hand, which is self-sacrifice. Self-sacrifice, 9/11. This is from The Silence of the Lambs, which came out before in 1991. So the duration of the film is almost exactly 119 minutes, 119, 11:9. Now, this, like many films, it's set on the opposition of the yin and the yang, the bad man, the old man, evil man, and the young woman, good woman, Clarice, two opposites, right? And at some point in the film, it's a key scene. Although Clarice is not supposed to touch Lecter, here she does. Her finger touches Lecter's fingers. Now, guess what? What do you have at the exact moment when she touches his finger? An upside down 9/11:1 and 88 here, and the timing is 11:3 or 1:13. And the next scene begins with the plane taking off. This is called Trading Places, famous film with Eddie Murphy, Dan Aykroyd, 116 minutes. Now, trading, of course, might be an allusion to the World Trade Center. Well, it is, we'll see in the film. And it takes place in Wall Street, very close to the Twin Towers. So again, white man, black man, opposition. And here they come out of a taxi. Okay, and on the taxi, here's a zooming of the numbers, 911, twice. If you remove the 0, it's 9/11. And you can even see here the reflection of, guess what? The Twin Towers. And even if we go back, the number of the taxi is 110, which is the number of floors of the Twin Towers. Now, a few seconds later, one of the two characters says, look, right in front of the Twin Towers, tridents. Nothing you have ever experienced can prepare you for the unbridled carnage you are about to witness. Well, they're talking about Super Bowl, but they're talking about killing, being killed, and carnage. We've got to kill the motherfucker. We've got to kill him, he says. End of the film, 9/11 on the clock, and the word futures, a bond with the future. And at the end, of course, they become good friends. Two opposites become one, the usual story. Oh, this is crazy. This is The Bone Collector, which came out in 1999. I call it the 9/11 subliminal overkill because it's absolutely crazy. So right at the beginning, you've got the Twin Towers. And immediately afterwards, still during the opening credits, you've got this man, Lincoln Rhyme, a black man, linked to the Twin Towers right from the beginning. And then we understand, we hear the police sirens, so 911. We see a crime scene. Okay, so we understand Rhyme is a policeman, a forensics expert. And we even see that now he's a quadriplegic and he faces twin landscapes on screens. Now, a few minutes later, we are introduced to a woman. But before that, we see the skyline of downtown Manhattan and the Twin Towers. Now, right above it, we see a plane flying right above the Twin Towers. Now, next shot, we see the woman, the second leading role in the film, Amelia, white woman, as opposed to black man. And she's clearly linked to the Twin Towers. Again, she's here near her bed with a boyfriend, and at the back, the Twin Towers. So male, black, explicitly linked to the Twin Towers, and then opposite female white explicitly linked to the Twin Towers.
You keep
And
showing pictures of the Twin Towers in which one of them is very white and one of them is very
yeah,
black.
no, this is not real. Yeah, this is
That-
just to show the opposition of the, like the yin and the yang.
Okay.
In Hollywood, they keep playing on this opposition. The Twin Towers represent, opposition, while One World Trade is the fusion, the merging, the unity of the two opposites, I believe. And here we got two extremely talented detectives, right? So we know that the Twin Towers were destroyed because of suicide attacks. So we're told. So Ryan, the black man, is an ex-police officer, so 911, who wants to commit suicide. So he doesn't like life anymore. He wants to commit suicide. Now, the woman, Amelia, she doesn't want to commit suicide, but her father was a police officer and he committed suicide. Okay, so this is a key scene. In this scene, Rhymes is looking at a torn page of a book with number 119. So he keeps saying 119, 119, 4 p.m., 119. And then he understands 11-9. What's today's date? And the woman says today's November 9, so 11-9. Key scene in the film. So it's really about 9/11. Here, Amelia says, so what does that have to do with me? Well, the answer seems to stand right behind her. Okay, the Twin Towers, which are at the back. She is connected to the Twin Towers, just like Rhymes. Now, here he says, Polly, I'm convinced this crime scene was staged, perhaps telling us something. Well, I believe they are telling us something. There is a message for us, the viewer. Here, Rhymes says, see if there's any large asbestos cleanups going on in the city. Now, we know that the Twin Towers were full of asbestos. Indeed, after 9/11, a huge asbestos cleanup went on in the city, right? Now, here, they look for the oldest sites with asbestos. And the first place they find is in Vesey Street. Vesey Street, of course, is the street where One World Trade will be built. Now, look at the date here, 9/11/1902. Okay, but with the space between the 1 and the 9 here. So just, it's like they want to emphasize a 9/11/1. This is crazy. Here he says, they say we come into this world with a preordained destiny. Now, does it mean that the Twin Towers come into this world with a preordained destiny? Well, obviously so. Maybe he's sharing the responsibility of these murders. He's talking about the murderer. He says, if we don't figure out the clues, the blood's on our hands. I think it's a message for us, the viewer. If we don't figure out the clues, the blood's is on our hands. So it's like sharing the responsibility of 9/11 with us 2 years before 9/11. Crime stories. Yeah, okay. This is also a key scene. They're talking about crime. So the killer is pointing us to an old book. Next shot, Twin Towers, middle of the screen. Next shot, inside a bookstore, true crime section. And then Amelia's finger find the books, and she finds these numbers 1191. And then she finds the book called The Bone Collector. Okay, so this is a key scene because she finally finds what she's looking for, the eponymous book of the film The Bone Collector. And the book was written by a man called Thomas Brines, supposedly a real murderer. Now, of course, Thomas is the twin. Now, guess what? Brines means burning on fire. So Thomas Brines, okay, is the twin on fire. At the end of the film, Amelia's white hand meets Lincoln's black hand. So it's okay, two become one again. And it's funny because right above Rhymes' head, you see one column, okay, like One World Trade. Wall Street, another film, 1987. I call it subliminal 9/11 at its best. It's full of references. Michael Douglas represents the Twin Towers. You can see it from the very beginning when you see the opening credits. Michael Douglas, and right behind, you see the Twin Towers. And he's called Gordon Gecko in the film. So GG, they call it GG at some point. So GG is the opposite of TT in the alphabet, like Twin Towers. He even says, he keeps saying that greed is good, GG. Michael Douglas. Now, still in the opening credits, Marv, I got a feeling we're going to make a killing today. All right. So look at the clock. It's almost 8:46, which of course is the time when the first plane hit the Twin Towers. Here we see that Bud will meet Gordon Gecko, the Twin Towers, between 9 and 11. He has an appointment between 9 and 11. And here, this man says, Gecko. Next shot, Twin Towers. Next shot, plane crash, in an article about a plane crash. Here, Michael Douglas says, or Gecko says, something big is going down. Meaning, I think, the Twin Towers are going to collapse. And I want you, pal, to fill out the missing picture. Well, I think because Bud represents the airplane, so he's going to complete the 9/11 scene. So something big is going down, provided you, the airplane, fill out the missing picture. Here's another clock from the film Wall Street. I knew you, Bud, had what it takes. And look at here, 9/11/41, which is the day when the cornerstone of the Pentagon was laid. I believe it's an indirect reference to 9/11, and that this date is not an innocent date, and it's immediately followed by a wink.
There's a lot here. I mean, I just kind of want to point out we've been recording about an hour now, and it's a lot. And I know you've cut a lot of this out. And actually, I've watched similar videos that go through symbolism, and yeah, it seems to never end. There's just hours and hours.
It just
and
never
hours.
ends. How much more do you want me to
go?
talk?
Let's go all the way. I'm just pointing out
okay.
how overwhelming this is, and to call one of these, a few of these, a handful of these a coincidence, that's something I can get on board with. But when it just continues, movie after movie, decade after decade, the idea of a coincidence becomes a little bit silly to me.
It is silly. It's just, it never ends. And I'm just showing you the tip of the iceberg. What I know is nothing in comparison to what exists, because I keep, finding more and more almost every day. So here, another shot from the film, same film, 11:19, look, or 9/11:1 backwards. And Bud says, will you do your own homework, Marv? So is he talking to us? Are we doing our own homework? Are we understanding what we are being shown?
It would be pretty hard, man. I mean, you said earlier that, we share the responsibility in the Bone Collector, kind of inferred that we share the responsibility if we don't understand the clues. I mean, this is pretty cryptic. I'm not blaming anybody for not picking up on this before the event.
No, it's easier to find them afterwards, for sure. This is a plane scene, and he says, I want to take this airline and turn it around. And this is immediately followed by the Twin Towers, partly shrouded in clouds, which look like smoke. And here they're talking about the airline company and the contract that cannot be broken up. There is a smoking cigar held between two fingers and the clock which strikes. Now, the next scene, just a few seconds later, got this digital clock which turns 9/11. 9:10:59, 9/11. And here, end of the film, Bud has just confronted Gecko, who hit him in Central Park. But in truth, it is Bud who defeated Gecko, who's now under arrest. So the plane has defeated the Twin Towers. Following scene shows what? The Twin Towers. And this is the end shot. So it ends with the partial view of the Twin Towers right here on the right-hand side. But for the first time in the movie, we're shown not two towers, but only one tower. All right. I believe it's a representation of the future One World Trade. Home Alone, came out November 16.
Are we connecting this one world transformation into, the one world government, new world order type of thing?
Well, probably. I suppose so, yes. So, Home Alone, the date, release date, 11/16, 9/11:1 in reverse. And he was 9 years old when he shot the first film. And in number 2, he was 11. This is 9/11 loaded. I'm now going to show them, to show you. everything. I'm just going to show you one example. So here you got a knife in the middle of the room. Next shot, American Airlines plane. Next shot, a knife inside the plane with an emphasis on the knife. But there are many, many other examples. Now I'm going to show you one or two examples from Home Alone 2, which lasts 2 hours, 0 minutes, and 1 second. So 2001. And I believe here the two wet bandits represent the Twin Towers. And here the Empire State Building in the middle is like the future One World Trade. And Donald Trump is present in the film. He makes a cameo appearance. And I'm not going to talk about Donald Trump today, or maybe just a little, but he's always been linked to the Twin Towers. And here is linked to the two columns. Now, there is one scene with the Twin Towers. So Kevin is at the top of the World Trade Center. Next shot, this sign, airport security. And near the end of the film, the two bandits who represent the Twin Towers literally collapse when attacked by pigeons. So, of course, pigeons are birds, and birds always represent airplanes. So the airplanes attack the bandits and they collapse. And after that, you see the explosions, police, 911, and so on. Okay, this is crazy because I believe nobody had seen that before. True Lies, 1994, with Arnold Schwarzenegger, of course. AS 119. This is loaded. So look at the title of the film. First you see True, and then you see Lies, but the colors are reversed. And now look here, subliminally, in a subliminal manner, 9, 11, 1. So you can read Lies, but what you can also see is 9, 11, 1. In this scene of True Lies, a Middle Eastern man is wielding a knife on a flying plane. And then what happens? The plane crashes into a skyscraper. And then you've got this plane-shaped hole in the skyscraper, right? So this is very, very similar, of course, to the plane-shaped holes in the World Trade Center, which are very, very odd, because how is that even possible? That the planes would make such shapes in a building. So you've got this in the film True Lies. And here we know that the man, the terrorist, is called Salim Abu Aziz. So here you see his name, ASA, okay, which converts to 1191. And he's the leader of the terrorist faction. So he's Muslim, implicitly Muslim, and is connected to New York in his address here, New York City. And here they talk about, we see 9/11 again, 9/11, 1. At the same time, we see Bank of Islam, and we see that they're talking about terrorist activities and nuclear weapons. And here, the man says, what are you talking about? He jumped from page 1 to page 11. Where's page 10? Okay. And then he breaks the window, which is an act of destruction. You even have the columns at the back. And here, they're watching footage of the terrorist who's said to have blown up a Boeing 727 after takeoff. And the man says, okay, pause it right there. And when you pause, what do you see? 9/11 or 9/11-1 and 33. And the pause button, by the way, looks like the Twin Towers also. Fight Club, which is 9/11 loaded. Okay, pay attention. This film came out exactly 2 years and 1 day before 9/11, September 10, 1999. So 2 years, 1 day, 2 become 1. You can even see Twin Towers on the poster. I'm just going to show you 3 scenes. So this one is with the dates, October 11, 99, which of course is 9/11-10 or 9/11-1 backwards. And the next shot, airliner. And here the narrator throws himself with outstretched arms and flies just like an airplane into the shelf on which rests a miniature Porsche 911. Okay, so it's like a self-sacrifice on a Porsche 911. And then, of course, both him and the shelf collapse on the ground, or on the floor. And this is the end of the film. Sorry, spoiler again, but it's an old film. So they're talking explicitly about ground zero, and then they say theater of mass destruction. And here they're watching the two Century Plaza Twin Towers of Los Angeles collapsed to control demolition. So again, remember, keep in mind that they were built by the same architect as the Twin Towers of New York. So we have the self-sacrifice and the two become one theme right in front of us, with the towers, Twin Towers collapsing.
To comment on this film as well, I mean, the big reveal in the film is that Brad Pitt's character, Tyler Durden, was actually a figment of the imagination of Edward Norton. But others have pointed out that actually, if you think about it, all of the characters in the film are figments of the imagination of Edward Norton. You know, the woman there, just like, you know, Tyler Durden, when it reveals it, you realize that it wouldn't have made sense for him to be there anyways, all this stuff. But all of the characters, I do believe, and others do believe, were just figments of his imagination. So to me, that is at least partially symbolic of the idea that the hijackers and all this stuff never even existed. And even Osama bin Laden himself, you know, was a CIA operative, and you know, he was a real person, but not acting in the way that we were told. But yeah, in this case, it does appear that practically every active character in the film is just a made-up figment of the imagination of Edward Norton.
Yeah, that's a good point. This is from the War Game in 1966, so it's even 2 years before this they started building the tower. But that's the year when they started breaking ground for World Trade Center. So this is a controversial BBC documentary about a nuclear war. Okay, and here they want to evacuate the homes. Look at the number 119, and they're talking about emergency. In the next shot, you see a police car, and then you've got this missile attack, and it's 9/11 into the documentary. Police car, sirens, missile attack. Okay, and then they even say time 9:11 a.m. September the 18th. So it's not September 11, but they do say September and 9:11 a.m. And here they come back to the house. So it is the only house they return to. So it's number 119, and this time it's been underlined 3 times. And then they talk about missiles again, and there's a siren. This is crazy. And this is about nuclear attack. This is Working Girl, which came out in 1988, twin year. So you got the Twin Towers on the poster. It's 113 minutes long, and it's 9/11 loaded. So during the opening credits, at some point, they're zooming in on the Twin Towers, and the song goes trembling, shaking, oh, my heart is aching. And then you see inside the ferry boat 2 women, and it's her birthday, okay? And she's 30 years old. Now, I think it echoes the World Trade Center, which we have just seen, and which is also 30 years old in 1988, from its year of conception, which is 1958. Yes, in 1958, the plans to build the World Trade Center came out. So in 1988, the idea, the plans of the World Trade Center anyway were 30 years old. And on a friend's watch, what do you see? It's 10 past 9 or 10 past 9. And it's difficult to see. It might be even 9/11 or almost 9/11. This is confirmed by another clock, which we see when she arrives, when she gets to her workplace. Presumably a few minutes later, it's 9:25. So it was indeed 9:10 or 9/11. And then she meets her new boss, right? Catherine. Now, her birthday is upcoming, and they find out they're both 30 years old. So I believe they represent the Twin Towers. And indeed, she says we're practically twins. Now, one of the 2 twins, the brunette, the boss, here wearing red clothes, falls down and breaks her leg. So I believe this is echoing the collapse of the first Twin Towers. And then later on in the film, The second twin, Tess, the blonde one with black clothes, so there is a contrast between the two. She collapses too after drinking too much. All right, so both twins collapse. Now, apart from the opening and closing credits, the Twin Towers make just three more appearances in the movie. So let's review them. So one of them is when the blonde's boyfriend says, "Come back and hit me." Next shot, you see zooming in on the Twin Towers. Hit me. Another occurrence of the Twin Towers. The boyfriend says, "Right now, we're history." The following seconds, we see Tess looking at the Twin Towers in the distance. So the Twin Towers are going to be history. And here in this, just before the final scene, Tess is reading a newspaper whose front page headline reads "Face Off," which echoes our upcoming face-off with Catherine, the other twin. Now, at the same time, what do we see in the background? Right here, in the ferry boat, the Twin Towers. And in this scene, the man says, or man or the woman, I don't remember. I said that, I think it's the woman. She says, "I said that the man who in 1971 looked into the future and saw that he was named microwave technology." So here they're linking microwave technology to the future. So I believe microwaves played a role in 9/11. And we are being told that in the film. And these are the closing credits. So Cynthia says, she's out, she made it out, she got out, she has her own office now. So she's raising her arms just like Christ, okay, on the cross, which means human sacrifice. And then we see the camera zooming out. We see that she's now in a new office, new woman, downtown Manhattan, in a high rise. And of course, it's one tower, which I believe foreshadows One World Trade. And again, you hear this song and you finally see during the closing credits, again, the Twin Towers with the words of the song, trembling, shaking, "Oh, my heart is aching." Now, okay, we're almost done. Gremlins 2, 1990. This is maybe one of the craziest films for 9/11. So here on the poster, you've got this armchair, which looks like a side, looks like a 9, and the two fingers with the smoking with the cigarettes, just like 9 and a smoking 11. A movie that says it all, yes, in my opinion. So the first image of the film after the introducing cartoon, I will speak about the cartoon in a few minutes again, but here the first real image of the film, you've got the Twin Towers inside a V. So they're emphasized, clearly emphasized. And
it's crazy how many movies open on the Twin Towers as their first shot.
Yes. So here they quote Rambo. And it's important because it comes back later in the film, as you'll see. And Rambo says, to survive a war, you got to become war. So I think it's a message for us. Okay. They became war on 9/11. So here you see a tower, which is Clem's Tower. Okay, so it's one tower, but it looks like two. And here at the foot of the tower, you've got this globe, which of course looks like the sphere. Very similar. And we're introduced to billionaire Daniel Clamp, okay, who's a parody of billionaire Donald Trump. Okay, I'm not making this up. It's, Daniel Clamp is a combined parody of Donald Trump, blah, blah, blah. So now we see his tower is called the Trade Center. Okay, now the TV talks about developer Clamp's Chinatown project, okay, in downtown Manhattan. So here you see a clock with 9 and 11 again. And then we don't know it yet, but the two men who find the Mogwai in the film in downtown Manhattan are twins. And one of them says, if you want to find something weird, you have to go downtown. Then we see this woman, okay, who shows Clamp's book. The title of the book is How I Took Manhattan. And it cost $19, of course, 19. And she wears a hat which looks like two towers. It's one tower, but it looks like two. How I Took Manhattan. And here we see Billy, the main character, showing a drawing which includes the Twin Towers. And the woman it shows it to smokes. She's actually chain smoking. She keeps smoking between two fingers. And then she says, the courtyard looks cold. It would be better with trees. I believe it's because in the future, okay, when the memorial will be made, it will be full of trees. Here she says, very interesting, she says it's a nuclear meltdown disaster. So again, she keeps smoking throughout the movie. Nuclear, it's something nuclear. Here it's an emphasis on the hat, of, which looks like two towers. And they're explaining that the tower is a smart building. And they talk about climate control. Okay, climate control. So I believe, again, this hurricane played some kind of role in 9/11. And of course, Marla is still smoking here, and she says it's a total suicide, red alert, deadline emergency. Very interesting. Next shot, of course, we see the drawing again with the Twin Towers. Now we're being introduced to the twins. So the twins are Martin, which means war, and Lewis, siege engine. So they're clearly linked to war. And even the names of the actors are important. Don and Dan, DD 44. Remember, Twin Towers opened on 4/4/1973. Here we see the Twin Towers, the drawing again, and it's hit by a baby mogwai ball. Okay, Twin Towers hit. And later on, we see the mogwai paw prints, which cross right above the Twin Towers, or at the top. Here there is a reproduction of Clamp's tower, which looks like two towers again, right? And at the top, above it, planes. Here we see microwave again, okay? Microwave with March show, okay? So microwave, I said it before, okay? I'm sure it's in many films I haven't noticed before, but it's, you know, it's about microwaves. 9/11 has to do with microwaves, the destruction of the towers. Here we see Daniel Clamp, so Donald Trump, in his tower, and we hear a very loud sound of a plane. Next shot, we see a photo. Okay, this is his secretary with a photo of the Twin Towers. And of course, evil comes right underneath the Twin Towers. And then Clamp himself is attacked by a gremlin right in front of the Twin Towers, or beside the Twin Towers. Very violent scene, Twin Towers. Mr. Clamp or Mr. Trump. Here we see the twin brothers. They are attacked by a flying bat gremlin. So twins and a flying creature. And Rambo is again quoted. So to survive a war, you got to become war. Okay. And it's quoted at 113, 11:3. And okay, this is crazy. Sorry, back to the next one, the previous one. Here, you've got the policeman, 911, and the journalist from channels 9 and 11. And then people hurrying in the streets. So, okay, Phoebe, come on, hurry. They're running in the streets of New York. You see this police car, and next shot, 9. And this thing comes out, you know, from the sidewalk with 11, 9/11. And from it, Clamps gets out, all right? It's his secret exit. So Trump, again, is linked to 9/11. And then he goes to the journalist, again, all right? So 9/11 here. They say, Mr. Clamp, is it true the building has been evacuated? Sir, is the building on fire? Okay, 9/11, everywhere. And then the gremlin is being interviewed in front of the poster of the Twin Towers. Here they are, okay, in the corner, in case you're looking for them. And then the gremlin being interviewed kills another gremlin, okay? So it's a murder live on television with the Twin Towers in the back. Here, Twin Towers, murder live on television. And then after rampage and destruction in Clamp's tower, the gremlins are celebrating, yeah. And then Clamp stresses the notion of sacrifice. So there is a policeman here walking through the debris of what looks like ground zero, and he's talking about sacrifice. Next shot, they're even cleaning up ground zero with this white smoke, very similar to what we're going to see on 9/11. Okay, we're almost done. I'm going to talk about a few eerie coincidences. So this is Patriot Act. I mentioned it before. Okay, so this was signed on October 26, 2001. All right. And of course, it gave authorities unprecedented ability to search, seize, detain, or eavesdrop in their pursuit of possible terrorists. Now, Back to the Future, the beginning and the end of the film take place on October 26, same date. This is eerie. Now, here's another one. I don't know if you remember that, but on November 12, 2001, which means 2 months and 1 day after 9/11, so two become one, a plane crashed in Queens, New York, after takeoff from JFK, killing 265 people. Many people at the time, including me, I remember, were under the impression that the attacks were starting again. Now, the key action date of Back to the Future is the day when Marty goes back to the future, and this is also November 12. This is very eerie. This is 1968. On September 11, 1968, there was a crash, a plane crash. The Ajaccio-Nice Caravel in France left 95 dead during Air France flight 1611. This is crazy. This is 1191 backwards. So since 1968, the families of the victims have been fighting to prove that the plane was hit by the missile. A French radio said back in 2022, it is the most mysterious crash in the history of French civil aviation. So again, September 11, 1968, 33 years to the day before 9/11, and the number of the flight is 1611, 1191 backwards. Crazy coincidence.
I'd like to point out another stretch of the numbers. You were talking about November 12th. Well, to me, that could be them stretching 11 and then 1 plus 2, which is 3, so it's really 311. And here in Canada, we say the dates backwards as well. So November 12th is not 11/12, it's 12/11, which could be 311 if it's 1 plus 2. Just saying. I know it's a stretch. I know skeptics will be like, "Oh, come on,
no,
come
that's
on."
Right. Now you're right. Now you're right. Absolutely, you're right. This is another very, very eerie coincidence. So we know that the Twin Towers were born in 1968, 2 towers that will open on 4/4/1973, and that will ultimately become one. Now, MLK, Martin Luther King, died in 1968, a major Black political figure, and he was assassinated as what? On 4/4/1968, in very disturbing circumstances. Now, another major political figure, now this time a white political figure, was assassinated in 1968, also in very disturbing circumstances. It's Robert Kennedy, of course, and he was assassinated 2 months and a day after King. This is Barbara Olson. She died on 9/11, sadly. She was quite famous as a journalist, and here it's just 2 days before 9/11, on 9/9/2001. She was on TV, and in the show, they're calling her a witch on a witch hunt. And then they're talking about, they refer to the White House, the Wizard of Oz, and she's laughing. And then the commentator her books. She wrote a book called Hell to Pay, and the upcoming book in October is The Final Days. Now, Barbara Olson, she was the wife of Ted Olson. All right, so he was the Solicitor General of the United States in 2001. Now, guess what? Very strange coincidence. He was born on September 11. So the late Barbara Olson, Ted's wife, was a passenger on Flight 77, which crashed into the Pentagon on September 11. Now, initially, she was scheduled to leave the day before, but she stayed an extra night so she could wish her husband a happy birthday. Now, remember that the corner store of the Pentagon was laid on September 11. It's very eerie. Here's her books, The Final Days. Now, this is a book I strongly recommend. I don't know if you've heard about it. It's Judy Wood. She made conferences, which are available online, of course. And she believes, the book is Where Did the Towers Go? Evidence of directed free energy technology on 9/11. So she believes direct energy weapons were used to destroy the Twin Towers, but were literally dusted. They disappeared. It's not a regular controlled demolition. Okay, so that's why I believe microwaves or DEW were used, just like her. It makes sense to me. It was used. This is an example of a directed energy weapon. Now, almost the end of my presentation. Let's talk about 2001, A Space Odyssey. So, of course, it's by Stanley Kubrick. SK 1911, 1191 in reverse, once more. And of course, it came out in 1968, what I call year one. So this man is called Floyd. I talk about him if I show you my presentation of COVID, but let's talk about what's at the back here. Okay, Hilton. Okay, the hotel. So this is the monolith, of course, of the movie 2001. Now, in 1992, they completed a hotel very, very close to the Twin Towers called the Millennium Hilton. And it has exactly the same proportion as the monolith. This is not a coincidence. This is ground zero on 9/11, 2001. Everything has been destroyed. Everything disappeared. The Millennium Hilton, the monolith, is intact. Okay, it stands here like a witness, like a sentinel. And that's precisely the name of the book 2001, A Space Odyssey was based on. The book by Arthur C. Clarke, The Sentinel. And the sentinel on the cover, you've got sphere, very similar to the sphere, which was at the foot of the Twin Towers. And let's finish this presentation with Tom Cruise. So this is his opening monologue for the Oscars, post 9/11 Oscars. We are being told that this monologue was written by Cameron Crowe, CC33. Now, Tom Cruise, of course, okay, I could go on forever talking about, just like Tom Hanks. Tom is Thomas, the twin, and in many, many of his films is linked to the Twin Towers or to twins. Now, this is in 2002, of course. He opens the first post 9/11 Oscar ceremony. Tom Cruise quotes Billy Wilder, "What makes a movie unforgettable? A little bit of magic." So this is what 9/11 was. Magic, a magic trick. He goes on to say, "We're all here tonight, sitting at home watching something came off a movie screen. A little magic touched our lives. And you always remember where you were, the theater, the popcorn, the people you were with when it happened." Well, isn't it somewhat ambiguous? Is he talking about cinema or is he talking about September 11? Because usually when you talk about, you always remember where you were, you're talking about 9/11. So I believe is deliberately ambiguous. And then he goes on to say, "It's 1968. My family is living in Ottawa, Canada, and the movie was Stanley Kubrick's 2001, A Space Odyssey." So of all the films Tom Cruise could have cited, he cites 2001, his first film experience in a movie theater, 2001. And then he goes on citing 3 other films: Jaws, which is, of course, about a killer shark; Apocalypse Now, which is about war, of course; and Raging Bull, which is about fighting. So he could have mentioned comedies or love stories. No, he mentions 3 violent films. And he finally brings up 9/11 without explicitly naming it. And then last September came an event that would change us, he says. And then he said, Should we celebrate the joy and magic that movies bring? Dare I say it, more than ever. And finally, he repeats the quote, Billy Wilder's quote, a little bit of magic. Tom Twin Cruise. All right, so that's that's what it is. Two towers, and then a few seconds later, nothing is left. The biggest, the greatest magic trick of all time. Thank you very much. That's the end of my presentation.
Awesome. How many slides was that, by the way?
I think almost 260.
Yeah, it was a lot. So yeah, I mean, for the coincidence theorists, we're really pushing what could possibly be a coincidence here.
I've got hundreds more, but of course I made a selection. I've got hundreds more, and I'm not going to tell you I've got thousands, but almost. I mean, I've got hundreds of them, and I made this selection. And there are all these films I've never watched, or I haven't looked for clues. So I'm sure it's just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, we can't watch every single movie and TV show, but there's clues for all kinds of things in it. And I have some comments here. So first of all, it's interesting to me, Sylvain, that a lot of our audience actually wasn't alive in 2001. We have quite a few younger people, and that always just kind of freaks me out. They grew up in this post 9/11 world, so they will never really know.
Yeah.
Now, I was a little boy when this happened. I was 11 years old. I was just about to turn 12. But I remember it very clearly. In 7th grade here, just the start of the school year. And our teacher, Mr. Kelly, in the morning there, whenever that was, maybe after our first recess or something, came into the class and he said, all right, kids, we're going to have history in the morning instead of in the afternoon or whenever it was scheduled. He said, this thing happened in New York and they're just going to talk about it. It was very somber. And we actually got let go from school early that day, sent home. And I can't remember, but it might have been the rest of the week was off or something like that. Basically, the whole world kind of shut down. And I went home, and anybody who was alive at this time would remember, especially in North America. I'm in Canada here. So one part of me was like, why are we even talking about this? We're in Canada. What's going on? But you turn on the television, and literally every single channel was playing the footage and talking about the incident. And I mean, even the cartoon channels, like every channel, we were not allowed to watch anything else. You could not watch The Simpsons.
Yeah.
There's no cartoons. Every single channel turned to talk about this. It was wild. And so comparing that even to COVID, right? We all remember that most of the mainstream, most of the time was talking about COVID, but you could still watch cartoons to my knowledge. I don't have cable, but I'm assuming the cartoon channel still played cartoons during COVID. And of course, we have YouTube now, and lots of creators took the opportunity to make more content and, start podcasts and stuff. Everybody started a podcast in 2020. Even me, I finally took that opportunity, that break to start the podcast. This podcast, the one that's still going. So I'm just saying we had other media alternatives during 2020, but back in 2001, that was it. And it was for weeks straight on every single channel, 24/7, for all of their programming. And even months and months later, like eventually the cartoon channels started playing cartoons again, but still months later, it just dominated the news cycle. And obviously, as you mentioned, things changed. In America, they enabled the Homeland Security, I believe, was created at that time, and the TSA, which I hate so much, the bane of my existence, those people, Homeland and TSA. Of course, they were created for our own safety here after 9/11, and not going to go too deeply into the hypocrisy here, but I've always thought it was just ridiculous that just because this one incident happened with planes, that's where they put the hyper security. Whereas, another incident happened in 7/7 in London, right? The subway bombings, or was that Madrid? It was Madrid.
Yeah, Madrid was in 2004, I think, and London in 2005. Yes.
So either way, they never enacted.
And Madrid, sorry, Madrid was on 3/11, 3/11, 2004.
So following those incidents, they never enacted this hyper security state in subways and stuff. Like you don't have to go and take your shoes off and your belt off when you're going into the subway, even though, 3,000 people died in the towers, which I'm not denying, but more than 3,000 people go to baseball games all the time, right? Baseball stadiums,
Yeah.
busy downtown subway stations and train stations, and like there's all kinds of
Yes.
places where 3,000 people gather. It just always seemed crazy to me that they put all this hyper security around plane travel, making it more inconvenient, more expensive, and to me that's a barrier to travel. It's taking one of your freedoms away. But what it really, really did is create an even bigger government. The government was already a megalithic power, but they allowed themselves to have many, many new agencies and, literally countless dollars worth of new budgets. They used this to start wars in Iraq, first of all, which had nothing to do with 9/11. No one ever said it had anything to do with 9/11, right? It was just, oh, we're going to use this as an excuse to go and invade Iraq. And of course, those wars pretty much continue today, even though, the US finally pulled out of Afghanistan. We still have a heavy presence in the Middle East, of course, and I want to circle back to that in a moment. But COVID, I'm just saying, we all think of that as the biggest psyop of our times, whereas I remember 9/11, and I remember that being still to this day being the biggest psyop of all time. And I was always annoyed back then. Remember, I'm an 11-year-old kid at this time. I do not care about world politics. I was so annoyed that this was pushed so hard. Like, we must care about this. You gotta care about this. Is what they were telling us over and over and over. It was in school, it was on TV, it was in the newspapers, everything shoved in our face. And I'm an 11-year-old kid. I just want to hang out with my friends and chase girls around. I do not care about world politics. And there was this big, looming threat for us in Toronto that we might be the subject of a terrorist attack as well. And our neighborhood was actually right beside a nuclear power plant. So now we had to do all these drills. We got to get into a bus, and they're handing out potassium iodide pills, and like all of it was so crazy to me. It was so fear-based. And back then, as a little kid, I was like, we can see the power plant from the school. Like, we're a block away, literally. There's zero chance that we're going to survive it if there's a nuclear explosion or something. It's zero. There's no way.
Yeah.
It's not happening. There's only 2 roads out of the neighborhood anyways. They're going to be jammed with cars. We're not physically going to outrun a meltdown. We're dead. We're right beside the power plant. This is why the houses are cheap in that neighborhood. Now they're not. Now those are $1 million plus homes. It's a little bit wild to me, but nonetheless, there was this constant terrorist
with knives, armed with chemical, biological, nuclear weapons. Fanatics, terrorists, September 11th. September 11th, killers, September 11th, terrorists. Terrorists of Al-Qaeda, terrorists, nuclear weapons, terrorists. 9/11, terror, evil.
September 11th, the terrorists, war and danger. September 11th, terrorism, global terrorism, the terrorism. September 11th, global terrorism, terrorism. September 11th, world terrorism, terrorism. September 11th, global terrorism. September the 11th, terror. Weapons of mass destruction. September the 11th, terrorists, the evil terrorists, no.
Of course, you got George Bush saying it all the time. It began to dominate the adult world, and it was also pushed onto us kids. Terrorists, Muslim terrorists, again and again and again. Like, I've never seen such a blatant attempt at brainwashing us. And it was vicious, and I was so upset about it. Just leave us alone. Let us watch some cartoons. My goodness. But anyways, I have read a couple of...
Well, yeah, it was... no, I mean, it was Act 1, okay? 9/11 was Act 1 of this... it was the first PSYOP. COVID-19 was Act 2. It was the second PSYOP. So the key word is fear, right? in each psyop, the big ones like 9/11 and COVID-19, the key word is fear, to keep populations in fear.
Well, it certainly worked. And even today, many people still harbor this maybe simmering beneath the surface suspicion of Muslims and Arabs and stuff like that. And we're not going to get into the whole Israel thing and all that stuff, but this has a lot to do with our American, I'm not American, but Americans, I would call them other protectorates or states. I consider Saudi Arabia and Israel particularly to be basically the exact same thing as the American government. It's an illusion that these are separate political entities to me. And I'll get back to Saudi Arabia in a second. There's an excellent book here called The 9/11 Commission Report, Omissions and Distortions. It's by David Ray Griffin. This came out in 2004. Now, after 2001, I tried to not think about this. I tried to just be a kid and live my life, obviously. But in 2007, a very famous conspiracy film came out called Zeitgeist, the movie, Zeitgeist #1.
Yes.
And they had a 9/11 section in there. And there's a couple of mistakes actually in that film, but I think it was very good overall. And it blew my mind. I had to watch it twice in a row. I bought the DVD copies. I gave them out to my mom and stuff. Like, I think that was the seed of her becoming a conspiracy theorist as well. It was really, really eye-opening. And I do believe David Ray Griffin was in that film. I can't say for certain. But either way, I bought this book after Zeitgeist came out. And yeah, I was blown away because this book was a very, very thorough takedown of the official story, showing that basically every aspect of the official story was demonstrably wrong. It was wrong according to science, according to engineering, according to the other contradictions that our politicians said at the same time. Like literally every angle that you peel into the official story, it was wrong. That's why the book is called Omissions and Distortions. The official narrative was just a complete fabrication. So this is an awesome book. I do recommend it. I might reread that one day. It's been a long time. And there's another book here called The Big Bamboozle by Philip Marshall. Now, this book right now on Amazon is actually for sale for $32, but a few years ago, it was not available. So I actually paid way too much for my copy. I paid like over $100, maybe even $200 I paid for this book. I kind of regret it, but it wasn't available and I was very interested. Now, Philip Marshall, top of my head here, was killed. Well, it was said to be a murder-suicide, I think, where he's said to have killed his son at the same time. But people have peeled into that story and said, that's BS. He didn't kill himself. I think this book here is a psyop itself, because this book goes in and lays out a pretty good case that it was actually the Saudi government that did it. And, got all this documentation about sending these 19 terrorists over and training them and da-da-da-da-da. It lays it out as if this guy's on to something, right? But I think this distracts us from the point that there was no planes. That's my position. There was no planes. The gouge in the ground from Shanksville, Pennsylvania had no plane in it. There was no plane that hit
definitely there was no plane. No, there were no planes.
No plane that hit the Pentagon. There's definitely no plane that hit World Trade Center 7, Tower 7, which was definitely brought down with bombs, right? Remember, 2 planes in New York brought down 3 buildings. That's the first time in history that's ever happened. And I don't believe there was any planes. And I have covered this, by the way. Once a year, I make a conspiracy compilation video called Wag the Dog Theory. And you can find that on wagthedogtheory.com or on Rumble. Type in Wag the Dog Theory. And in part 2, I actually do have a 9/11 segment there, which goes into the no planes theory. And you mentioned holograms earlier. I absolutely do believe this was CGI in the footage that we were shown over and over and over and over again. Yeah, my point here in bringing this up is I do think the Big Bamboozle is itself a big bamboozle. And I do not know the truth about what happened to Philip Marshall, if Philip Marshall was in on it the whole time, if he really died. I have no idea if he was just an actor in this, or if he truly believed the evidence that he was finding was real. I have no idea, but I think the book itself was planted into the conspiracy community to cast doubt on the no planes theory which I think is the correct theory, right? This one brings it into reality, like, oh, no.
Yeah.
It was terrorists, but it wasn't these 19 people acting alone. It was actually the Saudis that did it. Well, to me, the Saudi kingdom is a branch of the American government. And from the top of my head here, I'm not a Middle Eastern historian, but from the top of my head, I do believe that it was the United States who created the kingdom in its first inception. And I do believe that's why a lot of the Middle East in general is so mad at America to this day, because they keep meddling in their politics and keep, making sure that their people get into power, basically. And yeah, the Saudi Arabian kingdom has to this day gone unchallenged, basically. It hasn't been overthrown or anything. And I do believe that's because it's an American protectorate. And of course, this connects into oil and money and control and all this stuff. I'm just saying that this bamboozle here blamed the Saudis, but blaming the Saudis to me is the exact same as blaming the Americans in the first place. And I do not believe that anybody flew any planes into any building. And I do not believe that their passports magically survived the incineration of these buildings so
Oh,
that
no.
we could point our finger at them. We don't need to go all the way into it, but I'm just saying that there are other counter theories out there too, which makes this, a psyop within layers of other psyops as well.
Yeah. Yeah, you know what? To briefly come back on the destruction of the Twin Towers and number 7 as well, I believe they were destroyed by the same weapon, DEW, and I think that's the same thing which happened in the Pentagon and also the hole in Shanksville. I believe it was the same technology which was used, which includes microwaves and some kind of cold temperature nuclear weapon, right? And because you have the same symptoms on, you got this white smoke everywhere, complete dustification of things. Of course, in the Pentagon, it's just partial, it's just a small attack. It was deliberately made small. But I believe it's this kind of weapon. And again, I think the hurricane might have played some role.
It's a very, very interesting concept. And I'm interested in this book, Where Did the Towers Go? I will check that out. But yeah, I mean, my main point here in this whole 9/11 thing is that, at least in my consciousness before that day, the government was not a big presence. And the government became much, much, much bigger at that point. And of course, I have written a book called Everything the Government Does is Bad for Us. And I truly believe that. I'm getting ready for an update of this book one day. I've collected a lot more examples, because my thesis here is that every single thing that the government does is either directly bad for us or a private entity could do it better. There's nothing that the government can do better than private enterprise. And, I think the 9/11 was a good example, because what do we get? We got war, we got more taxes, we got more control. That's it. We got the NSA spying on us, and we got nothing good. And that's always the goal of the government, is just to expand their own power. And every single thing that they do ends up being bad for us. So
same thing here in Europe, Ryan, right? Ever since 9/11 and since COVID-19, the governments have, they have had more power. Okay, they control things. They always want to control more and more. So that's why I believe there will be an Act 3, unfortunately. That the question is, what is it going to be and when? Okay, I believe the answer is in the films, because they are not hiding anything. They say it all in the films if we look carefully. So I don't know exactly when it's going to be or what, but okay, we have to keep looking.
We have to keep looking, and we have to keep in mind that every single thing that the government says is a complete lie. To me, it sounds like an extreme stance to some people I know, but do not believe a single word that the government says or that the mainstream media says. All of it is some kind of a manipulation or a lie. And whatever they try to do next, it's probably going to be much like they did the first 2 times here, where the real power was enacted through fear, which was propagated through the media. So if we do not pay attention to this and we do not allow these ideas to take over our lives, then hopefully we can avert the next event. I do 100% believe that we definitely could have avoided shutting down the economies if people stood up and said, no, I don't believe the government. I don't believe the World Health Organization. I don't believe the World Economic Forum. I don't believe the media. If people didn't believe the media, we wouldn't have allowed it to shut down. And whatever is going to happen next time, it's going to be done through the media. So we got to turn off. We got to stop believing these. If you work for the government or you work for the mainstream media and you are a real person with good intentions, I think you should quit. I think you're working for the enemy. And there's some people who believe that, you can make change from the inside. I do not believe this in any way. You are taking their money. You are, I hate this. Oh, I'm just doing my job. Anybody who works for these agencies, anybody who works for the mainstream media, you are in fact a parasite. And I don't mean to be so rude or hateful or anything. I know there are some people who genuinely believe that they can make some good happen, or that, they need this job to pay their bills or something. But no, you are supporting the machine. And if you work for these organizations, you are against us. You are against the people. And if you are married to one of these people, I think you need to bring this up. I don't mean to get too political here, Sylvain, but I've believed for a long time that women are the ones that can really, truly make this happen. I do believe that anybody who works for the NSA, the CIA, the FBI, the Homeland, they should not be able to get laid. They should have their girlfriends and wives saying, look, I want you to quit. I want you to start looking for another job, because I'm going to leave you if you don't, because I think that you're working for an evil conglomerate and I don't want to be associated with evil, and I don't want to take money from the devil. Right.
Yeah, and they're very, very powerful. That's the problem. That's they are so powerful. Okay, so even though they're telling us everything, they still pull off their psyops, and the control is getting worse and worse. So yeah, it's a very difficult fight.
And I do think the way that we win it is by breaking away from it, learning how to pay less taxes. I'm not allowed to tell you how to pay less taxes, but you can learn how to pay less taxes. There are legal ways to do it, and there are other ways to do it. We've got to stop funding this machine. And that includes the gigantic corporations who are working in tandem with the government. And, there's a lot of people right now boycotting, like McDonald's, for supporting Israel, for example. And actually, there's been articles that have come out that have said, that boycott has actually hurt their bottom line. So I've thought this, for a long time, don't just boycott them because of political, boycott them because these companies are selling you trash. It's garbage anyways, right? Why? It's weird to me that people needed Israel as an excuse to boycott McDonald's. Why would you eat at McDonald's in the first place? You're poisoning yourself.
Correct.
Stop paying for poison. Yeah. All these big corporations are feeding you junk anyways, selling you junk. There's all the material things that we need on the open market, or at least most of them, are available from smaller companies that are not supporting these evil political maneuvers. And look at whatever companies participated in COVID. That's your big clue. Don't support those companies unless you absolutely, absolutely have to get that one thing from that type of company. In general, my philosophy for the anarchist in me believes that we should buy less. I like keeping my money anyways. Buying stuff that makes my life easier. I'm talking about like tools, property, stuff that allows you to live outside of the system, and then just keeping your money, buying necessities. Most of the stuff that is pushed on us is not necessary in the first place. Even things like phones and computers. I mean, I make my living on the internet, but these things have also enslaved me at the exact same time. And I'm trying to get offline as much as possible. I'm saving, I'm building my life so that I can leave the internet, so that I can throw my phone out of a window and never, ever touch a phone again, because these things have corrupted us, I think, more even than they have helped us. I don't want to rant too long, but everybody's been talking, all the major news outlets have been talking about how Generation Z is the most depressed generation in history. They're more depressed than the people who lived through the Great Depression. They're more depressed than the people who lived through both world wars. Why? They have all the material abundance in the world. They're spoiled with material abundance, but they do have the internet. They grew up on the internet, and the internet has made them the most depressed generation of all time. And this is happening to older people as well. I'm in the health business. We deal with all kinds of people who have this addiction to their phones, and they're complaining about anxiety, depression, how they don't have the motivation to work hard enough to get their own house or whatever it is. They're trapped in the system. And part of that, I think, is because they're also trapped on the internet, and they've done this willingly and they've paid for it. So a lot of the things that give us the illusion of a better life or an easier life have actually taken away from us. Theorists used to talk about how machines will free us, right? And that was a concern. Like, oh, if we get robots to build everything for us, what are we going to do with all our time and all this stuff? But we're going to be free. Life's going to be easy. It's going to be cheap because machines are doing everything. Well, it's done the opposite. We work longer than ever, and it seems that we're a slave to the machines. The machines that were said to free us have actually lowered our wages and increased our working hours. And it's very ironic that we use so much of that money from those working hours to actually buy more machines that enslave us further. It's a crazy situation, and I'm saying the way out of it is to spend less, buy less, do more with the simple things that we have available to us in life, the people around us. And for the most part, talk to any wise person. The greatest pleasures are those simple things. It's watching a sunset.
Yeah.
It's fishing with your grandson. It's sitting around a campfire with your friends. It doesn't require all this fancy technology and all this expensive stuff and all these name brands and everything.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what, Ryan? Yeah, I agree with you. I couldn't agree more. That's nature or good food or sunsets or the simple pleasures of life are really, there's nothing like that. But if you allow me to take a slightly different stand on the machine and the internet, I believe there are also very good things on the internet. All right, and so, for example, your show is a very good thing, and that I think the worst thing, the thing that is keeping us in fear is really the mainstream media and politicians. These are really these are the evil of the time, according to me, because they want to control us and they keep us in fear all the time. So yes, it's good to stay away from technology every time we can. That's a very good thing. But I also believe there are very good things on the internet, but we have to be wise enough to to select what is good and use it well.
Well, I do agree with that. I don't want to make it sound like everything is all bad. And yes, we have used this technology, the internet, to learn, to share. And yes, all that is good. But, a lot of these pros are talked about without the cons. And I just think the cons are immense. And we still can use the benefits of technology without being completely enslaved to it. Simple things like you don't even need to take your phone outside and stuff. I've been a big advocate of canceling your phone bill because I hate cell phone towers and how they're irradiating us from every angle. And people complain about cell phone towers and then they still pay a cell phone bill. It's just insane to me. So I haven't paid a cell phone bill in many years. And so when I go outside, I actually get a little bit of peace, right? I work on the phone and computer all day inside. So when I go outside to the grocery store or to hang out with my friends, I don't need a phone with me. And you can live life like that. I'll even put that link in the description. You can check out that video. These are little things that go a long way. And of course, we can do bigger things. You can move out of the cities. Everyone's complaining about being broke and I'll never afford a house in Toronto. I'll never afford a house in New York. So don't. Move to the country. Move to Kentucky. Move to Wyoming. Move to Alaska. Move up north in Ontario, Canada, like me, where it's very, very cheap. My house costs less than a parking space in the city. So even someone like me who's not rich, it's not a joke, by the way, it costs less than a parking space in the city. And therefore I can live much freer with much less stress in my life because I don't have to pay.
Yes.
Right? You have to pay for the privilege of being in the rat race, which is nuts to me. So leave it. Get out. Get out. Work towards it if you can't do it tomorrow. Just saying, there are options. We don't have to complain about it. And this whole new world order thing, one world government thing, it's focused on the cities. So if you stay in the cities, your city is very likely to turn into a 15-minute city sooner or later.
Yeah.
There's only going to be...
Yeah.
You're not going to stop this probably. There's going to be more cameras, more cell phone towers, more tracking, more stores that will not take cash, and they'll only take the chip reader on your card and maybe the chip reader in your hand one day, whereas the countryside is going to resist this as long as humanly possible. I can still go and buy stuff off the Amish and trade with them. And there's groups of people who are just never going to bow down to this. And there are economies, miniature economies that focus on commodities, things we really need. And no, you cannot buy an iPhone off of an Amish person, but you can buy many of your necessities off them because it's simple people that produce a lot of the things that we need the most. You know, wood and tin sheets, and we don't need iPhones. Just saying. This could be a longer discussion. I think we should cut it off there. I think this was really good, Sylvain, Tristan. I really appreciate you.
Oh, thank you, Ryan. Thank you very much for having me in your show. Thank you so much.
This was very awesome, and I do
was
look
a pleasure.
forward. If you want to do the COVID presentation one day, I am 100% down.
All right, so no problem. We can do this in a few weeks, few months. No problem.
You let me know when you're ready. And once again, if you have not read Sylvain Tristan's book, Redating Ancient Greece, that link is in the description as well. I definitely recommend checking that out. It's a great book for a great price. Still one of my favorite, if not my actual favorite, hidden history book. It's very good. Check out our previous episode.
Thank you, Ryan. Thanks.
Check out our previous episode that we did together. And Mr. Tristan, appreciate you once again. I look forward to our next meeting.
So do I. Yes. Thank you very much, Ryan.
Thank you. Thank you,
care.
everybody, for watching. Stay healthy, my friends. Until next time.